New Mexico Territory. Spring of 1872, the wind carried dust and danger across the high desert. And at the edge of a mining town called Black Hollow, a girl stood on a stage she never asked for. Vera Zeller tried not to flinch as the saloon doors swung open again behind her. She kept her chin high, though her hands trembled where she held them folded in front of her blue satin dress. The color had been chosen by Mr. Delane, the man who now leaned against the bar and watched her like she was a prize pig at auction. "I told you," he said to the gathering crowd, $10 to drink with her, $20 if you want her to sing to you. Anything more, we discuss. His voice was slick and practiced. You'll never see a prettier face this far west. Vera's cheeks burned, but she did not move. She had learned the cost of defiance. She had arrived from Missouri 3 months ago, lured by a letter that promised work as a pianist in a territorial hotel. When she stepped off the stagecoach, there had been no hotel. Only Mr. Delane, who smiled too much, and a locked room above the saloon. She had tried to leave once. He had sent 2 men after her, and when they brought her back, she had not tried again. A man entered just as the piano player struck up a tune. He was tall, with a rough trail coat and dust on his boots. His hat was pulled low, and a rifle hung across his back. He looked like he had not come for music or drink. He moved like he had come for trouble. Vera's eyes flicked to him. He was not like the others. He did not leer. He looked at her like he was trying to understand something. He walked straight to the bar. "Whiskey," he said. Mr. Delane poured it, but his eyes followed the cowboy's. "Name's Thayer Kittredge," he said, as if that should mean something. "Been down Prescott way doing some marshal work. You aiming to stay long?" Thayer did not answer. He took the glass and turned to face the stage. Vera sang because she had to. Her voice was clear, soft at first, then stronger as the song pulled her into it. When she finished, the room clapped. Mr. Delane smirked like he had trained her himself. Thayer did not clap. He set his glass down and walked to the stage. "You all right?" he asked her quietly. Vera's heart jumped. She looked down at him, her lips parting. "Do not talk to her unless you pay," Mr. Delane called. Thayer reached into his coat and pulled out a silver coin. He set it on the stage. "Now I paid." Vera said, "I am not supposed to talk. I do not care what you are supposed to do." His voice was calm, low. "Do you want to leave?" Her breath caught. She looked out over the crowd, at the men, the smoke, the doors that always led back upstairs. "Yes," she said. Thayer turned on his heel. "Then come on." The room shifted. Mr. Delane cursed. 2 men stepped forward from the wall, revolvers at their hips. Thayer did not flinch. He drew his rifle with practiced ease and leveled it in one smooth motion. "You want to make this a mess?" he said. "Go ahead, but I will not miss." Vera did not wait. She stepped off the stage. Her dress snagged on a nail and tore, but she kept moving, boots hitting the floorboards hard. Thayer kept the rifle aimed until they were out the door. Outside, it was cold. The sun was slipping behind the hills and the air smelled like dust and pine. Thayer led her to his horse, a sturdy sorrel gelding tied behind the livery. He untied it with one hand and looked at her. "You ride?" "Yes." He helped her up, then swung into the saddle behind her. His arm came around her waist, steady and sure. She had never felt safer. They rode hard until night, winding through scrub and creek beds, heading into the hills. When they finally stopped, it was at a small camp nestled beneath cottonwoods. He dismounted, helped her down, and started a fire without saying much. She sat close to the flames, her dress torn, her throat sore. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Thayer looked up from where he was poking at the fire. "Because I have seen enough women used like that. And because you looked like you still had fight in you. I tried to leave before. I believe you. I thought he would kill me. You were not wrong to think that." He paused. "But you are safe now." She looked at him. His eyes were dark, but steady. There was no pity in them, only quiet strength. "My name is Vera Zeller. Thayer Kittredge." She offered her hand. He took it. His grip was warm and solid. "You have family?" he asked. "No, not anymore." He nodded. "Then you can ride with me a while. I am heading north toward Santa Fe." I do not have money. Not asking for any. She hesitated, then said thank you. Thayer only nodded again and went back to tending the fire. They traveled for days, camping beneath stars, crossing dry riverbeds and thick pine woods. Vera traded her ruined dress for a pair of trousers and a shirt Thayer had in his pack. She learned how to cook beans over the fire and how to tie a saddlebag tight. Some nights they barely spoke. Others they talked quietly until the fire burned low. You always work with the law? She asked one night. Sometimes. When they pay honest. You ever get hurt? He held up his left hand. 2 fingers had scars. Once or twice. She stared at the hand. Then her gaze moved to his face. Why do you not talk much? Not much to say. I think there is. He looked at her, and his mouth twitched like he might smile. They reached a small cabin near Taos after 8 days. It belonged to a friend of Thayer's who was away in Denver. Thayer asked Vera if she wanted to stay a while. She said yes because she did not want to leave him. That night, she stood at the edge of the porch, looking out at the hills. Thayer stepped beside her. You all right? I feel like I can breathe again. He nodded. She turned to him. You saved me. I just got you out. You saved yourself. No, she said. You gave me a reason to try again. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His hand lingered at her jaw. I am not going anywhere, he said. She leaned into his touch. Good, she whispered, because I do not want to be without you. He kissed her, slow and sure. Her hands came up to his shoulders, and he pulled her close. They stayed on that porch, wrapped in each other's arms, while the night stretched quiet around them. For the first time in years, Vera felt safe, wanted, free, and she was falling in love. Vera rose early, the air still clinging to the night's chill as she stepped barefoot onto the packed earth floor of the cabin. A robin sang somewhere along the tree line, its call clear as glass. She wrapped a shawl over her shoulders and moved to the hearth where Thayer was already coaxing a flame to life from dry kindling. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and the line of his jaw caught the morning light as he leaned close to the fire. You sleep? He asked without looking up. A little, she said. My mind wouldn't quiet. He nodded, tossing a split log into the growing flame. Takes time. She knelt beside him and held her hands out to the warmth. Do you ever stop watching for trouble? I slow down, he said. But no, not really. Vera glanced at him, the firelight softening the lines around his eyes. Were you always like that? No, he said. Started after certain things happened. You don't forget where danger's been. She didn't ask what things. She understood the shape of silence when someone wasn't ready to speak. Later, while Thayer hauled water from the creek, Vera swept the cabin. A rough broom leaned near the door, the bristles worn but still willing. Dust lifted in little clouds as she pushed it into the corners. She found old nails in the floorboards, a cracked cup behind the stove, a child's marble tucked into a knot of wood. She left each thing where it was. By midday, the wind picked up, carrying the sharp scent of juniper through the open window. Thayer returned carrying 2 rabbits, already skinned. Vera took them without a word and began to prepare a stew. Her hands worked steady now, no tremble left in them. Your folks teach you cooking? Thayer asked as he sat on the porch and began oiling his saddle. No, she said, slicing onions. We had a neighbor woman. German. She smelled like camphor and made everything with cabbage. Thayer chuckled low. Sounds like a woman who didn't take nonsense. She didn't, Vera said. She let me use her kitchen because I kept her cat fed while she was sick. I think that was her way of saying thank you. They ate outside, the sun warming their backs. Vera watched Thayer as he chewed, quiet and thoughtful. His hands were nicked with old scars, the kind that didn't come from one bad day but a lifetime of hard work. I don't know what to do next, she said after a while. You don't have to know, he said. You just stay ahead of what tried to ruin you. I don't want to live scared. Then don't, he said. But don't pretend the world's soft either. She looked down at her bowl, then out at the hills. You think there's a place for someone like me? He met her gaze. There's a place for anyone willing to leave the past in the dust. She exhaled slowly, the stew forgotten in her lap. That evening, a wagon creaked up the trail. An old man stepped down before the horse had fully stopped. His coat was patched at the elbow and his beard held the same red gold as the earth. He squinted toward the cabin. Thayer, he called. Thayer stood from the porch, rifle resting across his shoulder. Afternoon, Garrett. Garrett tipped his hat to Vera. Didn't know you were keeping company. I'm not, Thayer said. Then, with a glance at her, added, Not in the way you mean. Garrett grinned. Didn't mean anything. Just come to see if you still had that extra scythe. My boys got fence to clear. It's in the shed. Take it. Garrett nodded, then turned to Vera. You staying long, miss? I don't know yet, she said. Well, Garrett said. There's always work over at the old mill if you're looking. Pays little, but it's honest. She thanked him, and he left without further comment. Once his wagon was out of sight, Vera turned to Thayer. You tell everyone I'm not your company? I don't lie, he said. But if you want to be, you just say so. She stepped down from the porch and walked toward him until they stood close enough to feel the space tighten with unsaid things. I don't belong to anyone, she said. I wouldn't want you to, he said. But I'd ride beside you if you let me. She touched his chest lightly, just above his heart. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe neither of us does, he said. But I'd like to find out. She didn't answer, just let her hands stay there a moment longer before turning back toward the porch. That night, she slept on the cot near the hearth, the fire burning low. Thayer stayed at the window, watching the dark for signs of anything that might try to steal what little peace they'd found. When he finally turned back, Vera was already asleep, her hand curled beneath her cheek. He lay down on the floor between her and the door, and for the first time in years, he didn't dream about gunfire. 3 weeks passed. The snowmelt had stirred the creeks into motion and the hills around the cabin had flushed with new green. Vera stood barefoot in the garden patch behind the cabin, turning the soil with a rusted spade she'd found in the shed. Her palms were blistered, but she welcomed the ache. It meant she was building something. Thayer came up the slope carrying a box of nails and the frame of a gate he'd cut from pine. His shirt was damp at the collar and a streak of ash ran along his forearm. You're digging too shallow, he said, resting the gate against the fence post. I've never planted anything, Vera said, wiping her brow with the back of her wrist. Just food that came in sacks and tins. He knelt beside her, took the spade, and pressed it deeper into the earth. You want roots to hold, you dig like you mean it. Give them something to grip. She watched him work. You grow up on a farm? No. My uncle ranched near Abilene. I stayed with him for a spell after my father passed. He made sure I learned to do more than handle a gun. I'm glad he did. He handed the spade back. We'll need to watch for beetles. They chewed up his squash every year. Vera smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Guess I'll learn to fight beetles next. That afternoon, they rode into Taos. Supplies had dwindled: flour, coffee, lamp oil. Vera wore a faded calico skirt she'd taken in at the waist and a blouse with one missing button. She walked beside Thayer through the trading post, eyes scanning shelves, mind turning over prices. A woman behind the counter greeted them with a slow nod. You're the one staying up in the old Romillo place? Thayer said, just keeping it dry till Elias comes back. The woman's gaze shifted to Vera. You his wife? Vera hesitated. Thayer answered before she could. Not yet. The woman's eyebrows rose, but she said nothing more. Vera's stomach twisted, though she didn't know why. Outside, the wind stirred the dust around the wagon wheels. You didn't have to say that, Vera said, staring out over the boardwalk. I didn't lie, Thayer said. But if it bothers you, I'll keep my mouth shut next time. It doesn't bother me, she said. I just wasn't expecting it. They loaded the mule with their purchases and started back toward the trail. At the edge of town, a rider cut across the road and pulled up sharply beside them. He was broad-shouldered, with slicked-back hair and eyes like pale glass. "Well, hell," he said. "I thought I recognized you." Thayer's stance shifted, his body tightening like a rope pulled taut. "Dolan," he said. "Didn't think I'd see you again after that mess outside of Flagstaff," the man said. "Still picking up strays, I see." His gaze slid to Vera, lingering too long. Thayer stepped between them. "You're not welcome to talk to her." Dolan laughed. "Easy, friend. Just making conversation." Thayer didn't blink. Dolan tipped his hat. "You're always so humorless. That's why the law don't stick with you long." He wheeled his horse and cantered off without another word. Vera waited until the sound of hooves vanished. "Who was he?" "Someone I should have put in the ground when I had the chance." "Is he dangerous?" "Not unless he's paid to be." They rode hard the rest of the way, silence stretching between them. That night, Vera stood at the edge of the porch, hands wrapped around a tin mug of coffee gone cold. "Was he part of your past?" Thayer leaned against the post beside her. "I tracked him once. He was part of a gang that hit mail riders. Killed a boy near Winslow. I caught the others. He got away. Why didn't you tell me? Didn't seem like it had to do with here." "With us." She looked at him through the gloom. "It does now." He met her eyes, something unspoken passing between them. "I'll keep you safe," he said. "I already feel safe," she said. "What I want now is to stop running." Thayer reached for her hand. "Then we stop." She gripped his fingers, rough and warm. "I want to build a life here. With you." He kissed her then, not rushed or uncertain, but with a quiet finality that settled beneath her skin like a promise. Behind them, the cabin stood solid against the darkening sky. The garden waited quietly for seeds. And Vera, once a girl caged in silk and shame, stood beside a man who saw her not as a possession, but as a partner. The world had not softened, but she had found a corner of it where she could plant her feet. And with Thayer's hand in hers, she would make it theirs. By early June, the air had thickened with heat, and the cottonwoods near the creek rustled with the weight of new leaves. Vera knelt beside the garden rose, coaxing thin bean shoots upward with twine and wooden stakes. Her arms had tanned, her hands no longer blistered but calloused, steady. She hummed under her breath, not a song but something half-remembered, carried from another life. Thayer returned from the northern ridge before midday, the horses lathered and dusted. He dismounted and tied them off beneath the lean-to, then came toward her with a slow gait, boots dragging a little more than usual. Vera stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. "You found something." He nodded once, loosened the handkerchief at his neck. "Tracks fresh. 2 riders, maybe 3. They didn't come close, but they circled downslope near the old sheep trail. She didn't ask who. She didn't need to." Thayer leaned his weight on the fence rail. "One of the prints had a split shoe. I remember it from outside Taos." Vera walked to the edge of the garden and rested her hand against the post, eyes narrowing toward the shadowed rise of trees. "How close do you think they'll get?" He didn't answer right away. "Close enough if they think I've gone soft." She stepped toward him, quiet. "You haven't. I don't want to be the reason trouble finds you again. You aren't. Trouble's following its own scent." He looked at her then, truly looked, like he was measuring what was worth protecting and what he might lose if he failed. "You think you'd be content if we moved east? Somewhere quieter?" Vera crossed her arms, digging her fingers into her elbows. "I think I'd be content anywhere you are. But I'm not running again, Thayer. Not from ghosts with guns or men who want to own what they didn't earn." A flicker passed across his face, pride, maybe, or something older. He reached for her hand and she let him take it. "Then we stay. But I'll need to ride toward Arroyo Seco tomorrow. There's a man there I trust who can help keep watch. I'll hold the place down." She squeezed his fingers. "You bring him back safe." The next morning, Vera packed him bread wrapped in oilcloth, a tin of dried peaches, and a strip of smoked venison. She tightened the cinch on his saddle while he checked the rifle's chamber. Before mounting, he turned to her. "If they come while I'm gone, they won't. If they do, take the back path along the creek. Lead the mule. Don't look back. I won't have to." He mounted, gave her a long look, and rode out beneath a sky the color of bleached bone. Vera spent the day repairing the cabin's back shutter, hauling water from the creek, and lining the pantry shelves with clean cloth. By late afternoon, the wind had stilled and the silence pressed in like a held breath. When dusk settled, she lit the lantern and set it near the window. The garden was quiet. No birds called. She sat in the rocker with Thayer's rifle across her lap, the weight of it oddly calming. Just before midnight, hooves approached slow, measured. Not Thayer's gait. She stepped to the door, staying in the shadows. Through the crack, she saw two figures dismount. One remained by the fence. The other walked toward the porch, boots silent in the dry grass. "You'll want to think carefully before you take another step," Vera said, rifle steady. The man froze, hands loose at his sides. "Easy now. Just looking for someone." "You found the wrong place." The man tilted his head. "That voice. You're the one from Black Hollow." A pause. "Delane's girl. I was never his." "Not what he says. Then he lies." "You planning to shoot me for just talking?" "I'm planning to shoot you if you come any closer." Behind him, the second man shifted, uncertain. The first lifted his hands, palms open. No harm meant, just passing through. Then passed through faster. They left without another word. Vera didn't sleep. She sat until dawn, eyes fixed on the tree line, ears tuned to the slightest motion. Thayer returned just after sunrise, his coat dusted with travel. She met him on the trail, rifle still in hand. "They came," she said. He dismounted fast, his jaw tight. "You hurt?" "No." "Did they touch the house?" "No." He stepped forward and took her face in both hands, brushing his thumbs beneath her cheekbones. "You didn't run." "I said I wouldn't." He kissed her forehead, then her mouth, slow and sure. "You held the line." She leaned into him, letting his coat press against her face, the scent of sweat and dust and pine grounding her. "You said you'd be back." "I always will." They stood like that for a long time, the sun rising behind them, casting long shadows across the earth they'd claimed, together. By July, the heat had settled into the soil, baking the hills under a white, cloudless sky. Thayer hammered the final plank into the barn's side wall, sweat running down the back of his neck. The boards were salvaged from an abandoned line shack 2 ridges over, and though they didn't match, they held. He stepped back, inspecting the angle of the roof line, and wiped his hands on his trousers. Vera called from the house, her voice light, carrying across the clearing. "You want something cold?" He turned to see her beneath the porch eave, holding a crock of well water cooled with stones pulled from the creek. Her dress was rolled at the sleeves, a faint trace of flour across the front. The scent of cornbread drifted toward him, warm and sweet. He walked over, took the jar and drank deep. "You'll spoil me. You're easy to please," she said, brushing his hair off his forehead with her knuckles. "Hard work and a meal, and you're content. I never had much else to want." She tilted her head, studying him. "And now," he set the jar down and looked at her, solemn. "Now I want what we're building not to be taken. Not by men, not by time." She stepped closer, resting her palms on his chest. "Then we'll guard it. Together." That night, they sat by the fire with a book Vera had found in town. Its spine cracked and pages foxed but still legible. She read aloud while Thayer whittled a length of pine into a spoon, his hands moving with quiet purpose. The rhythm of her voice filled the cabin, soft and sure, and when she paused to turn the page, he looked over at her, the corners of his mouth turned up slightly. "I never told you," she said, setting the book in her lap, "what I wanted to be when I was little." He glanced up. "No, I used to pretend I ran a schoolhouse. I lined up my brother's boots like desks and gave lessons to the cat. I even made slates out of bark." She smiled at the memory, then added, "I've forgotten that until now." "You still could," he said. "There's a need for it up north. Some of the homesteads near Mora have children without schooling." She looked at him, surprised. "You'd go." "I'd go anywhere you wanted roots." A silence passed between them, not heavy, but full. She reached over, touching the edge of the spoon he shaped. "And what did you want?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, without looking up, he said, "A place where no one needed me to draw a gun." She covered his hand with hers. "We're almost there." 2 weeks later, they rode into Mora Valley, passing fields of oats and clusters of adobe homes nestled beneath the Sangre de Cristos. At a small outpost near the river, they met a woman named Clara who ran a one-room schoolhouse. She had Vera's straight posture and steady gaze. "You taught before?" Clara asked. "No," Vera said, "but I've read more books than I can count, and I know how to teach myself." Clara looked at Thayer. "And you?" He kept his voice even. "I build. I fix." Clara nodded. "We've got a roof that leaks and a stove that won't draw. If you help me with that, I'll find a way to share the children." They stayed. In the days that followed, Vera took to the school with a quiet fierceness. She learned the names of every child, coaxed letters from those who had never held a pencil, and taught them hymns without hymnals. Thayer repaired the stove flue, patched the roof, and built a bench for the porch. At night, they returned to the small adobe house they relent, its walls cool and thick, its windows facing the eastern hills. Vera wrote lessons by lamplight while Thayer carved a row of pegs for coats by the door. One evening, after the last of the children had gone home and the sun dipped behind the ridge, Thayer waited outside the schoolhouse, holding something behind his back. When Vera stepped through the door, brushing chalk dust from her skirt, he held out a small box wrapped in oilcloth. "What's this?" she asked. He said nothing. Inside, nestled in soft cotton, was a silver ring, simple but finely made, with a rosewood inlay the color of red clay. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "I want to marry you," he said. "I want to build more than fences and shelves. I want to build years with you." Her hand closed around the box, then slipped into his. "I'd stand beside you for every day of it," she said. They were married at the edge of the orchard behind the schoolhouse under a cottonwood that had seen more than one lifetime. Clara stood witness. The children tossed wildflowers and someone played a fiddle with more heart than tune. Vera wore a dress borrowed from a friend, cinched tight at the waist. Thayer wore his cleanest shirt, collar stiff with starch. They said their vows beneath a sky streaked gold with evening light, and when he kissed her, it was slow, reverent, as though he understood every mile it had taken to reach that moment. They settled in Mora. Vera continued teaching, and Thayer took up carpentry, building sheds, mending wagons, and shaping wood into things that would last. They planted a garden behind their house, this one larger than the first, and watched it bloom in the warm highland sun. In time, they had a daughter, born on a summer morning that smelled of sage and damp earth. They named her Clara Rose after the woman who gave Vera her start and the tree they wed beneath. Thayer built a cradle by hand that was smooth and strong. Vera stitched her gowns from muslin and lullabied her to sleep with the same voice that once sang in a saloon. Years passed quietly. The cabin near Taos collapsed in a storm, but they never went back. They had no need. What they'd built now was stronger than pine and nails. Each evening, after the supper dishes were cleared and Clara Rose was tucked beneath quilts, Vera and Thayer sat on the porch, watching the sky turn to velvet over the ridge. They didn't speak much, not because they had nothing to say, but because they understood everything that mattered didn't need words. And when Thayer reached for her hand, and she laced her fingers through his, it wasn't habit. It was still choice. The land was still hard. The world still cruel in places. But in that quiet pocket of New Mexico, two people who had once been hunted by their pasts had made something whole. They lived the rest of their lives that way side by side, rooted deep and never once alone.